coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California. I'm Kaity.
I'm Karin. I'm Anne.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
It's always a guess which one of us is going to speak up last.
We know who says it first, but, we don't always. We usually have to look it up.
Yeah, right. I think we've cracked the code.
Sure.
So
Sure.
If you pick the book we're currently reading, you are the
Well, I understand that.
Yeah. No, I mean in the podcast too.
No, I mean like in our regular podcast.
Yeah.
Is it before or after though?
Oh man.
See?
It's before. We're going to decide this now.
Okay.
Because it was you.
Right. So next time is Anne's book pick, which means you'll hear her say the opening line for our next official book club episode
and maybe
or
we'll
podcast
look
episode.
That up, or we'll just
okay, you are two-thirds
Yeah.
correct because I will have to ask every time.
Well, we'll be able to just tell you.
Tell you. So, we love
I have not cracked that code.
I
mean, we've been doing this for like 70 episodes and we just figured it out. So bear with us.
Sure.
We only halfway know what we're doing.
It's not a prerequisite.
Karin just said we 66.66667 know what we're doing.
Okay, I'll take it.
That's 2/3. And I think it might be a D on some curves. So we're passing.
Yay. What's everybody working on today? Anne, what are you knitting?
I am still making my Riviera cardigan, I think is the name. I tried to find it on Ravelry and it is not there. But it's from a British magazine of a year of sweaters to knit. And it's going well. I have to make 7 sets of stripes.
Nice.
And I am in my middle set of stripes. So the back is turning out really cute.
I like that yarn.
Yeah. I like it, except irony for me is that I am mostly an outside pull person.
Uh-huh.
But on a skein, I kind of will take it either way.
Yeah.
And I pulled from the center on this tweed, or heathered tweed yarn from Loops and Thread, and it is a monster from the center because it's felting on itself.
It's fuzzy.
Right.
Fuzzy is grabby.
Mm-hmm, exactly. That's exactly the problem. It's polyester, acrylic, and wool, and that 4% of wool is trying really hard to felt itself.
Yeah.
No, you can't make me go.
Yeah.
I'm staying inside my cozy home.
Absolutely. Absolutely what's happening. So I'm getting a little frustrated with that, but I just have to put up with it for these 2 balls. I guess I could break it and start it again, but who's going to add more ends to a project?
Would you rather have to weave in 2 more ends or deal with the annoying ball of yarn?
Gosh, that's a hard choice.
Right? Because at the moment you're like, nah, I don't want more ends, but it's it's just 2 more. Well, technically it's 4 more ends, I guess. No, it's only 2 more.
Yeah, it's only 2 more, because the ball will have
It'll end eventually.
Extra certain finish.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay.
Right now I'm not in the mood to cut it yet.
Well, you don't have a whole lot left of that.
No.
It doesn't look
I'm
like.
maybe halfway done with this ball.
I thought that was your...
Yeah.
They're connected,
No,
I understand.
These are just the recent guts to come out.
Got it. I thought that was what was left of the skein before you added a new one.
The horror show fan, the horror fiction fan of me loves all those guts spilling out.
I eviscerated the center of my ball of yarn on the last felting knot that wouldn't give free. So I'm just trimming them as I go. Nice. You get that halo when you're working with mohair sometimes. Mm. And you just keep pushing that ring down.
That little donut of fluff. Yes.
Only this one's just not as cute because it starts out chonky to start with.
Say what's that word again?
Chonky. It's spelled CHONKY. In case you wanted to know for your vocabulary card. Yeah.
Cool.
So what are you working on, Katie?
I am knitting a little drawstring dice bag for James because I knitted him one many years ago. And he uses it all the time. And he was like, I need 4 more of these. And I was like, well, why don't I sew you some instead? Because that'll go a lot faster.
Right.
So I did. And he was like, no, I don't like it as much. And I was like, okay, fine. So I needed something brainless to knit. So I cast on a little tiny drawstring bag. So I did I don't remember, Judy's Magic Cast On, maybe. I don't remember what it is. And then I'm just knitting round in circles until it's bag-sized.
I am a little jealous. I got excited because, the dog ate Kevin's favorite dice
Ah.
container, which was a very cool, like, deck box style leather embossed thing with a latch, like a metal latch. And Yuki was like, "This is a pig's ear, and I'm gonna eat this all." You have something to say, Karin?
That the beginning of that was like the best excuse for a teacher ever. The dog ate my dice. The dog
ate my dice box. Yep. So Kevin like hates her the most ever now because it was something he won in some kind of like sweepstakes, and he really liked it. Yeah, it was handmade by an artist. Because I was like, "Did you get this?" I couldn't remember everything. I'm like, "Is this something on Etsy I could replace for you?" No. So I mean, possible. Anyway. So he's butthurt that he does not have a dice container that's special anymore.
Oh.
So Dante's Crown Royal bag turns up. It's the classic purple Crown Royal.
Yep.
It came from his like trip with his dad to a magic tournament that where this was abandoned from actual Crown Royale that was imbibed by the adults on the trip. So it's like a memento of the trip as well as a functional dice bag.
It makes a really good bag.
Yes.
We keep our Rummy Cube set in it.
Right. So, I'm sorry, Dante's is green.
Oh, okay.
So that's even more special.
That's even
green.
specialer.
I've never heard of that. That's awesome.
Because it's Dante's favorite color. Purple is Kevin's favorite color. So he's trying to like con Dante out of the Crown Royale. And Dante is holding fast. No, Dad.
Yeah.
And so Kevin there's someone on Amazon selling the Crown Royal bags as dice bags. And he ordered one for himself. And I was like, I got you. I was thinking of the little dragon you made. Yep. All of these cool things you made for dice containers over the years. I'm like, I can shine now.
I got a chance to do something.
And no. He bought himself a purple Crown Royal bag.
Good for him.
So anyway, I'm jealous that your husband made that request of you, even though it might be a boring project.
I mean, I cast it on this afternoon. It's small. It's maybe 3 or 4 inches long. I made him give me his old one so I could, because I kind of made it up on the spot when I made the first one.
And why 4?
Huh?
Why 4?
He has favorite sets of dice, and usually RPG dice is like a set of 7 that go together. And so he was like organizing his bag, and he wants to keep his like specific sets together in the larger bag. I don't know. But
do you have to color code the bags, or are you making them all the same?
I'm just using leftover yarn that I find in my stash, so he'll have to figure that part out. All right. But I made James socks out of this yarn a few years ago, so
I love the striping on that.
Yeah, that
is like reminds me of the Wicked Witch of the East, I guess, or West, or whatever.
Yeah,
in Wizard of Oz.
So like a lime green and black stripe. I bought this yarn when we were in Alaska. I remember that.
Very fun.
Yep. So that's what I'm working on.
Karin, what are you doing? It's so cute.
Technically, it's a finished project, but so I did the stranding project. I did finish last night. I did have the ribbing almost done, and then I was trying to do a sewn bind off, and I kind of hated it, and because I was really tired. It had been a very emotional day, and I just was not having a good time with it, and then trying to pick it out because I'd sewn it wrong so many places was just like I had a child who was trying to share with me all his troubles of the day, and I finally said, "Please stop talking to me. I love you. I appreciate your struggles, but please stop."
I've been there. I understand.
So I had before I show you the right side of this, because you can see all the strands of the wrong side. I did some really long strands where it was like 4 inches across, and I just picked it up a little bit on the next, because I was just like going for it. I wasn't going to try to catch it. I was just letting everything fly.
I don't think that's a problem.
Some of the tensioning might have been pushing it too far, so I had to do some very creative steam blocking.
Fair enough.
But my solution to that, because I like all my cowls to be slightly lined, is I have this really pretty pink called Melon. Although it's like I don't know, it's not a cantaloupe, but it's more of a cotton candy strawberry color to me. But this is from Teal Torch Knits Surrey Fluff. I love all her stuff. This particular is Baby Surrey Alpaca Silk. And a 74-26 mode, and it is. I like suri because I'm not allergic to it. I don't have a reaction to it like I do regular alpaca. It's just a different kind of fluff. But I just want to get this done fast. I'm gonna crochet my lining to make it.
That sounds lovely. We're proponents of mixing a crochet in it.
Yep. So this is the outside.
This is the one you were talking about with our last podcast, right?
And I actually finished a test knit on time.
Congratulations.
It's not due till Tuesday, but it starts with I guess this is supposed to be a wave, but I didn't make it that way. It just looks more like an argyle-y type.
It looks like
bottom
a wave. Like
of sorts.
a gentle wave.
Like a chevron.
Yeah.
A stripy chevron on the bottom. Then it has crabs, and it's got turtles and jellyfish and sea waves. The crabs, the turtles, stranding 4 strands at a time.
Yeah, no thank you.
That was,
boy.
I challenged myself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I almost was going to give up and do duplicate stitch because the rational brain said that's what I should do. But I'm like, no, I want to make it harder for myself because, I was working at my aggressions that way. And then because I didn't care for the blot, how it was pulling, even though I could pull it without stressing it straight, but I just didn't like until it was blocked. It still felt like uncertain. So it blocked nicely. And then the top are these, what do you call that color? Is that like it's not really a maroon, but it's.
I think we settled on something like
Merlot.
Merlot.
I was going to say plum.
Something like a plum or
I was going to say plum.
Yeah.
Syrah also wanted to come out at the same time as Merlot,
okay.
so I couldn't talk.
So it's a Merlot Syrah dolphin with a lime green underbelly and splashes of blue and sea kelp of green. So I was doing 3 strands at a time on that one.
Okay, I'm going to deep cut on that. That is the color of dolphins when they go home to their home planet. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Yeah. See, now, in that Douglas Adams book, I love that part. The shape of this dolphin reminds me of the old Sega game? Sega Genesis game, Echo the Dolphin, which was graphically amazing, and the playability sucked horribly.
That might be a deeper cut.
Yeah.
Huh?
You're
It was from the 90s.
Yeah.
So, before kids, when we actually had time to play games. But
it was the 90s.
yeah. Anyway, so the thing I really, really liked was I did the tubular cast on, and then I did this long tail tubular bind off.
Gorgeous. I love it.
Which I love. It's like, I was so much happier than trying to sew it. I mean, so I was like, I did sew it because it's more of grafting.
Yeah.
But doing a round of slip stitch where you're slipping all the knits and working the purls, and then doing another round where you do the opposite. So you have almost this double knit, and then they're joined together like a rolled top with a grafting, which I was really, really enjoying. Anyway,
nice.
That's part of my favorite part. But so what I'm working on is putting a lining, because the lining makes it soft, but it also hides. It gives a layer of protection, so I can't possibly snag one of those extra long strands.
You wear glasses, so could possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very pretty. So what did we read, Katie?
Oh, we read a book called Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan.
Mm-hmm.
The synopsis says, it is 1985 in a small Irish town. During the weeks leading up to Christmas, Bill Furlong, a coal merchant and a family man, faces into his busiest season. Early one morning while delivering an order to the local convent, Bill makes a discovery which forces him to confront both his past and the complicit silences of a town controlled by the church. It says, Claire Keegan's tender tale of hope and quiet heroism is both a celebration of compassion and a stern rebuke of the sins committed in the name of religion. And I chose this because it came recommended to me by a handful of people. And also because it was a very bite-sized book.
Yes, so you win for most bite-sized books.
Yes.
And what I kind of felt like this was, its equal and antithesis was my selection of Grapes of Wrath.
Yes.
Because it's kind of the same vibe.
Yes.
but just told so much more succinctly.
Yes.
Which is ironic because it is set in Ireland.
Yeah. Every story about Ireland is sad, and this is no this is no different.
I was just going with the succinctness being
that also, yes.
a laudable thing.
I found this. So this book won the Booker Prize, or it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2022, and they have great resources on their website for books like that they have chosen. So I have some pretty good questions, I think. But before we jump into deeper discussion, what were your initial thoughts? Did you enjoy it?
I did like it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. I liked the part of the shortness of it was that even though I'd read it early, I could actually listen to the entire thing today.
Again, yes.
I was going to.
It was 1.5, but still.
Yeah. I read it. I was gone over the weekend, and I sat down one morning, and we were with friends, so I was like, I don't know if I'll have time to read my book, but I had the physical book with me. And your yarn is going in your tea.
Thank you. Just saved it.
So I sat down one morning for like an hour, and I drank my coffee while people were still sleeping, and I got, I would say 80% through the book in one sitting. Yeah. So I finished it this morning, and I thought, I could listen to it again, but I didn't. But
I really appreciated that it was free on Audible.
That is nice.
Mm-hmm.
There were several of her. I was just looking it up to make sure that I was remembering that right. And there are several things on Audible of hers that are free.
Mm.
Foster, Walk the Blue Fields, and Antarctica.
Nice.
Foster looks like it. I mean, it could be a continuation of this story, I wonder.
Yeah.
Because it's short like this. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I think
Good.
it was a good choice, and it was just the right size for time management.
Isn't that nice?
No, it's not a continuation.
I have a couple questions. I'm going to jump to the last one, actually, just because we're talking about it. But at 116 pages, Small Things Like These is the shortest book ever to be shortlisted for the Booker Prize. When questioned on this, Keegan previously said, quote, "Elegance to me is writing just enough," and went on to say that the character of Furlong isn't someone who says much, so a longer novel would not have suited his personality. Discuss whether Small Things Like These constitutes a novel or a novella.
Okay, I would definitely put it as novella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to be skirting short story.
It's very short and sweet.
But it was exquisite.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was walking the streets of their town.
Mm-hmm.
When they describe the night of the tree lighting, and then they go home and they bake the Christmas cake.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was there.
I felt like I was in the room.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're doing this thing, and now it's time to go bake the pies. And
Yeah, the quote on the cover says, every word is the right word and in the right place. And I was like, I think that describes it well. It is.
It's
extremely well written.
And the way that communicating these important relationships, like we're already signaled that Ned triggers something in his emotional life.
Right.
Before it's pointed out, like, oh, you look just like him.
Yeah.
You must be a relation.
And she follows you along really well to be like, yeah, this was a man that he grew up with. It is important to him. He considers him his family. And at no point did I think like, I mean, it's short, so you don't get a lot of chance to think about these things. But he thinks like, oh, I wonder who my father was. And then it's like, oh, you kind of look like Ned. I was like, oh, well, yeah, duh.
I like how it never occurred to him to think that until he said it takes a stranger to make you think about something.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh. It's almost like we go along. I thought, well, maybe he's like most people. When you look in the mirror, you're not really looking at the whole face. And you're just looking at your face to do what you need to do, and then you're moving on. And you're not thinking of your face in terms of other people. So, and yeah.
One of the great, like, you know, you read it in school is Thomas Hardy. And I had a real hard time with Thomas Hardy.
I used to voluntarily read him.
Well, that's okay. Writers of his time, too. Thomas Hardy describes every flower in the field.
I just skim past that.
I can't.
I can't skim like that.
I'm like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're past the flowers. Now we're back into the meat of it.
Tess of the Durbervilles is a riveting tale of harrowing, you know.
We also did Vanity Fair,
woman.
right?
I don't know. I'm gonna look because, like I said, I'm not a fan.
I mean, it brings me back to Grapes of Wrath and a whole chapter about a turtle, right?
Like, you're talking about Test of the Dubervilles. Yeah, that was a long one.
So, like,
I skimmed more than I read on that one.
I have this icky feeling for people who over describe.
Yes.
And she's so skillfully and precisely set us in the room or on the street with these characters at every move.
Yeah, so perfectly.
Ugh.
I think
Just
she does
the right number of words.
I think she does a really good job of, like, instead of saying, like, oh, welcome to, you know, whatever the name of the town is, and it looks like this and that. She doesn't give you any sort of context until you're following Bill along, and he's, you know, going about his day, and he's walking through town, and he's interacting with these people, and he's going here and there, and you learn, like, as you go, but very quickly are set in this setting.
Yeah, like, through so much... Because, like, I'm thinking about where are other places where, like, I could so clearly picture the people or the settings, like, when they're wrapping up on Christmas Eve, and they're scrubbing down the yard and scrubbing themselves down. Like, I can now picture exactly what he looks like during a work day and what all his men look like, you know?
Okay, so... most of these questions come with a quote to sort of set us into it, so... When his mother's trouble became known and her people made it clear that they'd have no more to do with her, Furlong was born to an unmarried mother who died. Due to the generosity of his employer, he was one of few babies born to a person outside of wedlock who got to stay with his mother. Discuss Furlong's experience and the long-term impact this had on his character. We haven't really touched on, like, the plot of the book, but...
well, that's where we open.
Yeah.
I think... So, how does this form him? Is the gist, right? Well, I think it makes him feel set apart a little bit.
I feel like he was given a huge gift in that he did not grow up with the stigma that many children grow up of. They're born out of wedlock. He had the opportunity to grow as a person and have his own business and to almost have a regular normal life such as it is for his class, which was just such a rare gift of his mother's employer, that he could not only be with his mom, but also as a person, he did not suffer the stigma that the children of, you know, the girls that we'll hear about, you know, and his mom was spared the treatment,
right?
Of the girls.
She was living and working in this big estate when she
so she got to be insulated,
right?
Because I'm sure she heard about it.
Yeah, and I think I remember him talking about how, like, kids were mean to him a little bit, but he still had a chance to, you know, go to school, and, you know, you hear, you know, in the book about families who have nothing and they can't afford to heat their houses and stuff like that. So I think he was spared a lot of that.
And he is a respected member of the community. He was allowed to. He didn't that because of not having to deal with that stigma. He was able to grow and be a respected person. A lot of people care and know about him. He has a very kind heart. You know, and his wife is like, "You're giving everything away," and he's like, "No." But then when you hear how people pay him sometimes, or, you know, when they ask, "Is it okay if I put it off for a week?" And
he has a lot of compassion.
He's a very compassionate person, which not everybody who grows up in those circumstances, you know, grows up with compassion, even though no matter how they're treated.
Right? Why can't you pull yourself up?
Right. Yeah. Okay. The Taoiseach had signed an agreement with Thatcher over the North, and the Unionists in Belfast were out marching with drums, protesting over Dublin having any say in their affairs. What was the political atmosphere of the time in Ireland, and how did this impact communities such as the one Bill Furlong lives in? So this is 1985.
They call it the Troubles.
The
right?
Troubles.
During the Sunday Bloody Sunday time.
I don't think I totally like grasp it, because like it's an industrialized nation that's having this internal strife that I don't know. I think like I just it's hard for me to really comprehend the terror that people lived under, like the terror and the strife that people lived under, because because the analogs of Ireland are its neighbors, like England, like it's a world apart and yet the same,
right?
Was this when they split into Ireland and Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I think
which
when
are two separate countries.
I think that's the resolution of the Troubles.
It's I could Google it. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it says that they had already that the Prime Minister and Thatcher had signed an agreement. So I'm assuming it was around this same time. Yeah, and I can't imagine what it was like in 1985, but I've been to both Ireland and Northern Ireland, and there's still a lot of tension in that country.
So, like, tell us about how you saw that manifested.
So we went to Derry, which is the scene of many of the troubles, like the Bloody Sunday and stuff that took place at Derry, aka Free Derry, aka Londonderry, depending on who you ask. And they've got these big political murals in the town square. It's a walled city. And so you can, like, from the town square of these, like, murals of revolutionaries. And there's this really famous one of, like, a person wearing a gas mask. And from that town square, you can see, like, the church and the walls and stuff. And so, like, the contrast between the two is really, there's this big, just giant wall that just says, "Welcome to Free Derry." And then we went to Belfast, which has a wall running right through the middle of it that still separates communities. And it's still like Catholic, Protestant live on separate sides of the wall to this day. And depending on, we talked to like a taxi cab driver and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, we don't, like, they don't interact with each other on a social basis still."
And that's like, I mean, intellectually, I understand it, and yet experientially, like,
because they tore down the Berlin Wall, but they've never torn down that wall.
I don't think they want to.
Yeah, they want it.
Some people, I'm sure, do.
Right.
But is it the good fences make good neighbors? Or the neighbors you never have to deal with?
I don't know about that, but I think there's a large faction of people that appreciate the wall is there, and a large faction of people that wish that, you know, both sides could have peace. Like, there's different, you know, the vibes, depending on where you are. But in all of Ireland proper, like the southern large part of Ireland, it's not really, you don't see any sort of reflection of that going on because they got what they wanted. And in Northern Ireland, the majority of the people that live there are happy to live separate in Northern Ireland. But there are still people who believe themselves to be Irelanders living there that still want the Catholic Church out. And that's in 20 whatever year I last went there. So it's interesting that, like, this was 40 years ago, and it's still, you know, there's still remnants of it to this day. Obviously not to the same effect or magnitude, but yeah, it was an interesting place to visit in the north. And, you know, you had to, you know, stop and go over like a proper border, but at this time there would have been armed guards at the borders. And
so that was actually happening when I was in high school, and our government teacher, you know, talked about that in my senior year, and he felt, I mean, there was a heavy religious aspect to it of the Protestant. There was of who was in power at the time. The Protestants were in power and over the Catholics, and he felt that over time, he predicted that over time that would change as Catholics would keep having babies and outnumbering them. But I don't think he took into account as the world gets more and more modern, not, you know, even the Catholic Church's stance on birth control changed. So that, you know, that has an effect on. Back in the 80s, there was a no birth control rule.
There is still no birth control endorsed by the Catholic Church.
No?
The pill has been okay since the 1960s.
I was going to say, oh, okay.
Because my mom, like, very devout Catholic, wouldn't take it until there was an okay from the Pope. Then she took it and she had it to my brother.
Oh.
And then she's like, no, it doesn't work. Anyway, so, but the birth control is not really sanctioned by the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Still not. Okay.
No. One of the recent popes, I think it might be the current pope, said that using condoms should be done for people's safety and health.
Right.
But it's still not really okay.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think I don't know where in Ireland this is, but it doesn't take place in Northern Ireland. So it would not have been as tense depending on how close to the northern border this town lies. I don't know what sort of impact it has on their community specifically, because the book doesn't necessarily touch on that very much, but
you get the sense that it's something happening in the world, but it's not necessarily close to this village's daily life.
I mean, this village is run very strictly by the Catholic Church. That's kind of the whole point of the story. So,
yeah,
I think that sets the tone for where we are. Lately, he had begun to wonder what mattered apart from Eileen and the girls. He was touching 40, but didn't feel himself to be getting anywhere near to be getting anywhere or making any kind of headway, and could not but sometimes wonder what the days were for. Weariness, worry, and repetition are imbued in the story, and Furlong's character seems like a man on the brink. What are the factors that have led to this? I mean, I think that most people can probably relate to how he feels a lot of the time, about working hard and feeling like you're not getting anywhere.
Well, that description of his, I go to bed exhausted.
Yeah.
I wake up again so early before everyone else to do it again.
Yeah.
And that's just the grind of it. And it sounds like he's prone to working 7 days a week. So yeah. That hit me where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Because she said even on your day off, you don't have a day off.
Yeah, he still goes and does, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just how life works, is you have to work as much as you can. I mean, I don't think that he is necessarily separate in that. He is the, owner of the business, but he's still there 6 to 7 days out of the week. And he's the one doing the deliveries, and, he doesn't make his men work on Sundays, right? But every once in a while he has to pick it up to, deliver a load of coal to the local convent. When Furlong first visits the local laundry to deliver some logs, a girl with roughly cut hair begs him to help her and take her, quote, as far as the river. Furlong replies by showing his open, empty hands. What does Furlong mean by this gesture?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's
yeah,
I have nothing for you.
Not a shrug, but I can't offer you anything. And not that, and I don't think he means I don't have a means of transport, but I am not able to do that for you. Mm-mm. You know what I mean?
Or if I were making that gesture, it's look around you. You expect me to do this? I can't do this for you. Look around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Huh.
Because everyone really depended their livelihood on the goodwill of the nuns. Yeah. He really couldn't. Even his wife admonished him, "Don't do it." No, somebody else. It wasn't his wife. Somebody else.
Yeah, I have another question about this.
To keep an eye on and not to cause. Don't make trouble. You gotta.
So it says, after he visits the laundry, a woman who runs the cafe warns Furlong about what he has seen there. Quote, "'Tis no affair of mine, you understand, but you know you'd want to watch over and what you'd say about what's there." To what extent did the wider community seem to have knowledge of the real goings on in the laundries? And do you think that the villagers were complicit in the crimes that were happening there?
Well, it depends on your feeling of the bystander effect. Mm-hmm. Our Furlong, he chooses not to be a bystander, right? Ultimately, I wonder, because we've been talking, I've been trying to digest because I took that political update and it just in turn to be just telling me what the time of this was happening. I wasn't thinking about the climate. Uh-huh. So I think if I'm understanding right, then that agreement in 1985 is an update to something from the 1920s, where it promises that like nothing will be decided for Northern Ireland without a clear edict from the people. And the Troubles went on until 1998 and they were ended with the Good Friday Agreement. Thank you, Google. So we're in the thick of it.
Yes.
So that makes me feel like Ireland's governed by the Irish, and the way of Ireland is it's a church state.
Yep.
And so to be more entrenched in that church state, which is what's happening when you let a religious order decide what's happening to these girls,
right?
So yeah, I think they're complicit, but they don't think that they know any other way.
I mean, or
are not brave enough.
Yeah, our protagonist doesn't seem to know the extent of what's going on there. I mean, I think he understands, like, oh yeah, girls go there to live when they need a place and they don't have anywhere else to go, and they might be...
It could have been his mother's fate.
Right, and so I don't think he knows, like, the extent of how the girls are treated there.
The privilege of a man.
That's true. The privilege of a man.
Yeah. His wife knows exactly. Like, she's like, I am not talking about this.
I think the women of the village know what's going on. Absolutely. And because their world of what they can and cannot do is very he can walk. It's hard work where he has his life is hard as far as work goes, but he can go anywhere he wants at any time. He can go visit. He has privilege to not know things, to not be touched by that. Even though he has daughters, it wasn't. He felt that as long as he kept them they had a good life, they were good in school, that they were safe from that ever touching their lives.
That's a quote from one of Kevin's early teacher mentors. When you have a boy, you worry about one. Fill in the body part. But when you have a girl, you worry about all of the fill in the body part.
Yeah. That kind of leads us into this other question that says, inside the laundry, one of the nuns suggests Furlong must be disappointed because he has 5 girls and, quote, no boy to carry the name. Furlong replies by saying, what have I against girls? My own mother was a girl once, and I dare say the same must be true of you and half of all belonging to us.
I love that. I love that moment.
Yeah. Why is the feminist attitude expressed by Furlong unique for the time and community that he lives in?
Well, it's a very patriarchal, all of Europe is very patriarchal, so you don't have a son to pass everything on to?
I mean, he didn't have a father, he took his mother's name, and I think that set him on a path of being supportive of the women in his life and respect for, the women in his life and the work that they do. Being different than the work that he does. I mean, he gets home and his hands and, shoes are black with coal and dust, but his daughters have been working in school and in their little uniforms and doing their homework, and his wife is busy, doing all of the things that she has to do. And I don't think I think that he has appreciation for all those things.
Yeah, because he
was raised by primarily a single mother. I mean, there were men in his life, but not as specific father figures. Having that single mother taught him an appreciation for the women in their work. He has a more progressive view just by the circumstances of how he was nurtured.
And perhaps he has an ability that is not common in his peers or older men in his group to see her as a person.
Yeah. That's true. The book ends at a point where many other authors would have began their novel's second act. To what extent is Keegan deliberately asking the reader to create the rest of the story for themselves? What do you think happens to Bill Furlong next?
His wife accepts what he does, but is pissed.
She's got to be so pissed.
But
he's right.
Yeah, but I feel like there are a couple that's very in tune.
Yes,
which is another unique thing for this time.
Yes.
They're very conventional, but they seem to be very connected.
They seem like partners.
Yeah.
There's an equality between them.
Yeah.
And he has a respect for her that and you could tell he treats her well in a way that was not as common among more patriarchal men of his time.
Yes. Yes.
And again, I think that goes back to he was raised differently. He wasn't raised to be this, the overlord of his family.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he knows he has to risk the wrath of his wife and his community to do the right thing because he could not live with himself. What he would weigh on him for the rest of his life if something happened to her would change him in his character beyond, I think. And he doesn't want to do that. It's hard. His wife, but then didn't his wife say, invite him over? We've got plenty. We've got what's one more?
Right.
And I thought, oh, that's predictive, but I don't think she meant it in the way that he's going to take it. What's one more?
I think she has the capacity to meet his generous heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she has a lot more growth to do than he, because he's sharing, that he gave the change in his pocket to the little boy, and she's irritated by that. And later she picks at him about it when they've gotten the $50 bonus from the nuns. Oh, if your father hasn't given away all the change, and he says, like,
that was a little bitter.
Didn't you get enough pay today or enough earnings today? And she, like, it really took her aback.
Yeah.
Because he probably is not one to speak a harsh word. That was probably, like you said, it took her aback, but
He seems like a very gentle, take it in turn kind of person.
I found a part that I was meaning to come back to, which sort of, I think, speaks to his character. They're discussing, what to do at Christmas, and he's kind of, stressed out in his mind about the things that he's, concerned about. And it says, a part of him wished it was Monday morning, that he could just put his head down and drive out to the roads and lose himself in the mechanics of the ordinary working week. Sundays could feel very threadbare and raw. Why could he not relax and enjoy them like other men who took a pint or two after Mass before falling asleep at the fire with the newspaper after having eaten a plate of dinner? Like those, it's easy for you to relax when you're unaware of how other people are doing around you, when you're just concerned about yourself and your situation. And I don't think that Bill can do that.
So he likes Monday.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't want to sit at home and worry about things. I want my brain to be focused on work and what's ahead of me.
Has a rhythm.
Yeah.
But I think seeing her in the cold, having daughters of his own, he starts thinking about his life, and he starts really internally struggling, and he's delivering things on Christmas Eve, and people are giving him gifts of this, and he's like, wait a minute, why aren't I? We have enough. Why they're giving me this candy I don't even need? Why didn't I give that to the family, back to the families who have need, who don't have nice, even candy? That would have been such a great treat for them. And that internal, I like that in such a short time we got to see this internal struggle of, it's almost like all of a sudden he's made aware of the privilege that he has. Even though he's a hardworking person. Life's not as hard. And he's like, my wife is not, how am I going to tell her? My wife's not going to get the things. Oh, no, that's a different book. Sorry. Too many audiobooks.
We
Sorry.
didn't even get into that.
No. But,
I don't think he's worried. I think it's a loaves and fishes moment.
It's not.
When you decide to give, there's plenty for everyone.
Yeah.
It's more. I don't think it's a worry. I think it's he's thinking things deeply that he didn't think about before. Yeah. It's kind of an awakening moment, and it's a growth moment. Growth is not. There is sometimes the best growth comes when we are struggling internally. Yeah. We're having to sit with uncomfortable feelings and thoughts, and having to look deep and figure things out. And I think this is him going through that.
Yep. Is there a question about the river and the bridge at all?
In what context?
Well, so everything in this writing has a point.
Yeah.
So when he's talking about walking over the bridge with her, and that the bridge is meant to claim 3 lives in the year, I was really worried about where that was.
Oh yeah,
next.
no.
So do you have a feeling for how that fit into what she was telling us? Like, he
I
doesn't.
feel like that
he
was...
talks about past deaths that have the rivers taken.
I sort of take it as, like, this community is run by the Catholic Church and, like, these things that are so important to you know, the people and their way of life and stuff. But then they give you a little mini...
tragedy if you test it.
Or, like, there's other, like, myths and fairy tales about the monks who cursed the river, and, like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
And they, you know, but these people still believe that that's true enough to be worried about it.
Yeah.
And so I think it sort of hints on whether or not this community is accepting these things as truth because it's a myth and legend, or because, you know, they're susceptible to believing fairy tales, you know what I mean? Like, is the church's...
They relinquish power to the story.
Yeah.
So maybe, like, relinquishing power to the nuns.
Maybe.
And so he has the sense to test that?
Maybe.
Okay.
Like, I feel like he's sort of falling out of favor in his mind with the church, like, separating himself from what he's been raised to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that serves as an example of, like, well, these other people in back then used to believe this, and isn't that silly? Right.
Okay.
That's sort of how I take it.
Okay.
I don't think he's losing faith in God, but losing faith in the institution.
Right.
Because how can God bless this institution that is so damaging and horrible to God's creations?
There's a quote right here that I underlined. It says, "As they carried along and met more people Furlong did and did not know, he found himself asking, was there any point to being alive without helping one another? Was it possible to carry on along through all these years, the decades, through an entire life, without once being brave enough to go against what was there and yet call yourself a Christian and face yourself in the mirror?" Amen. So I think that he believes that, like, the good of the church and what it stands for is right and true, but you can't call yourself a Christian until you do those acts and follow what is supposed to be right. You know what I mean?
Do you have, like, a truck with a loudspeaker? So we can just, like, drive the streets and read that?
I know, right? I know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish they would actually preach that at our church, at churches sometimes, because they'd be like, that's a whole nother topic for another day. Yeah.
I mean, it's part of this, but it's a big topic.
It's such a powerful statement, and yet it's so simple. It just brings it down to the basics of, if you are a person of Christian faith, how do you practice that? And, you know.
Right.
Well, one time, I mean, Katie, you said this one time, it rings in my ears all the time when I'm thinking about my relationship to other people. If my friend tells me that they're hurting and I don't listen, like you said, sometimes I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, if my friend tells me they're hurting, who am I to say that they're not?
Right.
Like,
right.
I think about that all the time. Like, if someone's telling me that this is how it is,
in their mind, that's how it is.
Listen to their perception of
right, because just because it's not your experience or you don't necessarily see it doesn't mean that it's not a thing that exists.
Yeah. So, like, if people are telling me that my behavior is not good,
right? Yeah,
not for the good, I guess. Then maybe I should listen. That I'm like coming at it from the wrong direction.
And the fact that they care enough about you to tell you is.
Those kept in the confines of the laundries were often described as, quote, fallen women. Discussed what is meant by this and how the women in Irish communities were powerless against the church. I want to read the note at the end of the book about the context of this, because I learned a part of Irish history that I did not know. So it says, this is a work of fiction based in no part on any individual or individuals. Ireland's last Magdalen laundry was not closed down until 1996. It is not known how many girls or women were concealed, incarcerated, and forced to labor in these institutions. 10,000 is the modest figure. 30,000 is probably more accurate. Wow. Most of the records from the Magdalen laundries were destroyed, lost, or made inaccessible. Rarely was any of these girls' or women's work recognized or acknowledged in any way. Many girls and women lost their babies, some lost their lives, some or most lost lives that they could have had. It is not known how many thousands of infants died in these institutions or were adopted out from the mother and baby homes. Earlier this year, the year the book was published, which I think is 2021 or 22, Earlier this year, the Mother and Baby Home Commission report found that 9,000 children died in just 18 of the institutions that were investigated. In 2014, the historian Catherine Corliss made public her shocking discoveries that 796 babies died between 1925 and 1961 in the Tuam home in County Galway alone. These institutions were run and financed by the Catholic Church in concert with the Irish state. No apology was issued by the Irish government over the laundries until Taoiseach Edna Kenny did so in 2013. So I did not know that was a part of Irish history.
I did.
Yeah.
I remember that report coming out. And as having been a teen mom myself, it was chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, you have these girls who, what do they call them? The fallen women that have, become pregnant or have lost, for whatever reason, they end up in a predicament where they need help.
Yep. And
the answer to them is to put them in a convent where they're not cared for at all.
No,
and
they're abused.
Yeah.
It's abused and misused.
And all because the church runs the state and they say that it's, it's a shame, right? Mm-hmm. To be a teen mom or for whatever reason, there's more reasons than that these women ended up in circumstances that they had no control over and they had no opportunities in life to make it better for themselves.
Well, this, you caught the part when he asks her name, and she gives a boy's name.
Yeah.
It's because they had to be called by the boy that got them pregnant.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Just so they could be reminded of that shame every day.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, but what's your name?
Nothing like Catholic guilt. It's very well engineered.
The response of his wife, I thought about, those girls, or somebody who said those girls got themselves in that situation, the shame that they put on them. But oftentimes,
I think it was his wife.
Things happen to the girls from their own family members that did not.
One of our favorites, Wayward.
Yeah.
Like she's a child.
Yeah.
Basically raped.
Yeah.
But all of the shame is carried by the young girls. Yeah. So I cannot even imagine this thing happens to you and your family disowns you, and now this is this abusive life that happens to you.
And you carry the name of the person who did it to you, so everybody knows. But I would bet that 90% of the boys that did that, nobody knows that that's a thing that they have done. No. They don't carry that with them to be expressed to everybody that they meet.
No.
Yeah. Let's see. Economic hardship is woven throughout the narrative of small things like these. How does the author's use of language and detailing evoke this sense within the novel?
Well, she takes the time to illustrate the transactions. She talks about little things like all the paper goes into the furnace. It's like nothing's wasted.
Right.
The careful...
Even their letters to Santa.
I thought that was very smart.
Yeah.
I'm like, the kids will never know.
Right. Straight... Well, I was imagining magical stardust going up the chimney and heading straight to the North Pole. I love the one daughter's like, this address seems short.
Yes. Just the North Pole. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. Everybody knows where Santa lives.
Yeah, obviously. So the little things. Or the thrift in selecting just one present from their list.
Yeah.
And knowing that those kids would probably be grateful, and the contrast of the piles of BS I give my kids.
I know. Yeah. There's a lot of there is a lot of talk of transactions with he goes to, all these different places in the store and all that, but then he's interacting with all of these people. He's probably relatively well off in his community. He's not rich or anything, but he's got a house he can afford to heat. He's, his children have new shoes. He bought his wife a Christmas present. He wants maybe a book for Christmas because he doesn't need anything. And then he, interacts with the people on his route that he's delivering to, and he leaves a bundle of logs at somebody's house that he knows can't afford it, and, you know, as like a little gesture, or people ask him for credit, and I think he doesn't really express, that doesn't say whether or not he gives it to them, but I think that the fact that they ask him probably means that he's pretty lenient.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that the people are good for it, too.
Yes.
Like, the description of the family who had to walk to town to pay their bill because they sold their Jeep because the stress of whether or not they could pay was too much. So to not go without rather than not be able to pay a bill.
Not one person when they addressed Sarah or asked where she was, not one person they met addressed Sarah or asked where he was taking her. Feeling little or no obligation to say very much or to explain, Furlong smoothed things over as best as he could and carried along with the excitement in his heart matched by the fear of what he could not see but yet knew he would encounter. In this scene toward the end of the novel, in which Furlong escorts one of the girls from the laundry outside and through the streets to his home, what personal battle is he also facing at the time? So he's
walking her home.
Mm-hmm. He's got excitement in his heart matched by the fear of what he could not yet see and knew he would encounter.
What is the personal battle?
I think is
he up to this task, I guess.
Yeah.
Will this choice be accepted when he gets home? I mean, these are the implied consequences.
But also I believe that this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of girls live there.
Yeah.
And he saves one of them. Like, what is he going to do?
Save one, save the world, though.
I hope.
I think
you can.
Just even saving the one is going to create a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People will talk about that, and then they will be forced to talk about it.
Good point.
They're not going to be able to because he did this, save this one. They're not going to be able to ignore. I mean, the fact that one of the girls was like, "Could you not just even take me to the river where she's going to kill herself?"
Yeah.
And so I'm not of the Catholic faith. Can you share with me what the consequences of suicide would have been?
Yeah, you don't go to heaven. You can't be buried in sacred ground.
And they would rather do that.
You're going to hell.
And they would rather do that.
I don't believe that.
They would rather do that than continue living under the vice grip of the nuns.
Yeah. You're taught that you're guaranteed eternal damnation if you kill yourself. So that is better than the living hell that they're in. Yeah.
This resource guide that I'm looking at has a brief history of the laundries that I'd like to also read.
Oh, yes.
So it says from 1922 until 1996, thousands of girls and women were held prisoner in the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. These workhouses were commercial and profit-based laundries run and funded by the Catholic Church and the state. The true figure of those remains unknown, but it's said to be at least 10,000. We went over this in the book. While there, the women were forced to labor tirelessly while suffering physical and mental abuse at the hands of the church. The women and girls who were unwillingly held there were often described as, quote, fallen women. They tended to be unmarried mothers and their daughters who had grown up in the church or state care, women with mental health issues or disabilities, and those who had suffered sexual abuse. Confined for decades while starved of food and education, many became isolated from society and institutionalized. While there, many lost their own lives as well as their children. In the early 90s, 155 unmarked graves were discovered in the land of a convent in Dublin, which eventually triggered a public scandal and wider awareness of it. In 1994, folk singer Joni Mitchell wrote a song called The Magdalene Laundries, which was included in her album Turbulent Indigo. In 2002, The Magdalene Sisters was released in cinemas depicting 4 women incarcerated in a Dublin laundry. 2013 saw the release of the tragic comedy Philomena, about a woman desperately trying to find her forcefully adopted son after life in the laundry. Stories of laundries persist in media and in the arts, with many more books, plays, and screen adaptations of the women's stories. Despite this, the last laundry was only stopped operating on the 25th of October in 1996.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, it's heavy stuff. Yep. But those are all of my questions for our book club today. So unless you have any other points that we want to go over or anything, I think we've
I have to laud this book on that there was so much to unpack.
Yeah.
In such a little package.
This could have been such a bigger novel.
Yeah.
And I appreciate so much the fact that she did it so artfully and so perfectly succinctly. And it's not that I would not have enjoyed this book if it were longer.
Oh, no, I would
because
have
it's a
stayed in
really
this
great
world.
story.
Yeah.
But yeah, what an incredible job.
Just.
I really want to read her other works
Yeah.
now too, because
Tons free
Yeah.
on Audible. I'm so excited. Who doesn't get a lot of Saturn though? Like,
Yeah.
Like Angela's Ashes can't do it. Like the book starts and I'm crying.
yeah.
I don't think I got past the first chapter on my first attempt, and I don't know if I really want to go on that journey.
Yeah.
But this was beautiful.
This was a good way of learning and reading an extremely sad story that you
Yes.
don't have to spend so much time in.
Yes.
Not that it's not due to like learn and like just to spend the time and, feel it,
Right.
but in a very, I wouldn't say easy, but sort of enjoyable way.
Yeah.
Because
it was approachable.
Yeah, it's a beautifully written story.
Yeah. Well done.
Yay! Thank you to everybody who recommended this book because I enjoyed it thoroughly. Who gets to pick next?
It's me.
What are we reading, Nan?
Okay, I get choices. I don't
Okay.
think I've ever done this.
Oh.
You choose. So
Choices.
I'm taking my my go at choosing.
Okay.
So the first two are things I wanted to read with the Smitten Bookstores book club, but I do not have time to do so. So first, I offer you a fantasy romance set in the fairyland. I don't know how spicy it is.
Okay. I hope it's a little bit spicy.
Yes, Kevin's reading A Court of Silver Flames right now.
Oh.
Like, I got to the real spot. I'm
Yeah.
like, good. So you've got my wish list there.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
Take notes.
Blah, 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 blah.
I won't say more.
And what is that one
So
called?
this one's called The Ever King.
Okay.
The Ever Seas Book 1. So I think there's at least one more book already published.
Okay.
By L.J. Andrews. And short synopsis. For years, Eric, the scarred king of the Ever Kingdom, has thought of nothing but vengeance against the man who killed his father and trapped him beneath the waves, making him a prisoner of his own realm. Until his enemy's daughter unintentionally breaks the chains of the Ever, and Eric makes her the unwitting pawn in his vicious game of revenge. She's innocent, he's vicious, but he will take back what he lost no matter the price, unless she steals his heart.
Oh, got it.
Okay, so that's the Ever King.
Okay.
Next is Butcher and Blackbird, which also has a recent sequel coming.
Mm.
Let's see, I'm looking for the synopsis. Sorry.
Who's that by? Butcher de Black.
Bryn, Brynn Weaver. A Friends to Lovers dark romantic comedy full of murder, chaos, and spice. Unlike anything you've heard before. Every serial killer
I
needs
don't
a
know if
friend.
that's true.
Every serial killer needs a friend. Every game must have a winner. I mean, okay, this is speaking to my heart about every game needs a winner. When the chance encounter sparks an unlikely bond between rival murderers Sloane and Rowan, the two find something elusive: the friendship of a like-minded pitch black soul.
Okay.
From small town West Virginia to upscale California, from downtown Boston to rural something.
Rural somewhere.
Texas, the hunters collide. The two hunters collide in an annual game of blood and suffering, one that pits them against the most dangerous monsters in the country. But as their friendship develops into something more, the restless ghosts left in their wake are only a few steps behind, ready to claim more than just their newfound love. Can Rowan and Sloane dig themselves out of the game of graves, or have they finally met their match?
Okay.
So there's like Murder Olympics?
Maybe, yeah.
Hunger
And
murder?
The last one is a new book from Leigh Bardugo, who is Shadow and Bone and all the books in that world.
Yeah.
What is that called? It's called the Grishaverse.
Yeah, the Grisha.
She is also, what I like even better than that, she is the author of The Ninth House and Hellbent, which are set in the real world, but in the secret school of Yale's secret societies. And I really, really love those books. Okay, so I'm excited that I'm looking forward to the third one in that last mentioned world, but instead she published this standalone.
Okay.
The Familiar. In a shabby house on a shabby street in the new capital of Madrid, Luzia Cotada uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Luzia use those gifts to improve the family's social position. What begins as a simple amusement for the nobility takes a perilous turn when Luzia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Still reeling from the defeat of his armada, the king is desperate for any advantage in the war against England's heretic queen, and Perez will stop at nothing to regain the king's favor. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Luzia plunges into a world of seers and alchemists, holy men and hucksters, where the lines between magic, science, and fraud are never certain. But as her notoriety grows, so does the danger that her Jewish blood will doom her to the Inquisition's wrath. She will have to use every bit of her wit and will to survive, even if that means enlisting the help of Guillen Santangel, an embittered immortal familiar whose own secrets could prove deadly for both of them.
Oh.
Okay. So Ever King fairy romance.
Okay.
Butcher and Blackbird, dark romance, friends to enemies, I think it said.
Okay.
And The Familiar, which is...
Seems like a lot going on in that book.
Yeah.
I mean, we love a good, magic woman story.
Yeah,
we love a good witch book.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I
want to read all these, so I'm game for where y'all are leading.
I would vote for The Familiar.
I'm kind of between The Familiar and Butcher and Blackbird.
That one doesn't excite me as much.
Okay, Familiar.
Yay!
That's easy.
That's my
Nice.
favorite of the choices.
I know
Okay,
I love
good.
Leigh Bardugo's writing style.
I've never read any, so.
Oh, that's
Well, I
good.
hope you like it too.
Yeah.
I don't
welcome.
know, because I've not disliked anything.
Good.
So, sorry, this is longer than your choice.
That's fine. My book was 2
It
hours
was a
max.
treat.
It was an hour and 57 minutes.
It made budgeting time fine. Because yesterday you're like, want to meet tomorrow? And I was like, haven't read the book, but the answer is certainly yes.
Cool. Well,
it's nice to have a book snack once in a while.
What have we read?
I am in the middle of a book called Kith and Kin, which is a I am a big fan of Critical Role, and that's a Dungeons and Dragons show. And this is based on 2 of the characters' backstories. That's a set of twins, brother and sister, and this is their backstory growing up. And the Critical Role is a show where they play Dungeons and Dragons, but all of the players are voice actors, and so they read their parts in the book. And it's been very fun to read. I'm about halfway through it, but that is what I am currently listening to.
That sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
Karin, what have you read?
So I've been, since I've been doing a lot of work at home, I've been doing a lot of audiobooks,
Fair
so,
enough.
hour after hour. I did pick up this book at our local Tambra Books called The Fellowship of Puzzle Makers by Samuel Burr. Really, really good. Would reread it. I was just so glad I actually did get the in IRL version of it, not just the
Your shelf trophy.
I got my shelf trophy, but it was so I can go and read that again. I also finished The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. That was the 3rd book in the Indian Lake trilogy. It was good. It was different. I'm like, wow, this poor town. Everything, they're every kind of I'm like, I think this is the last. I don't think any more could, the way it was written, it kind of finishes it off nicely, because it's not realistic that so many murders would be drawn to this town.
I mean, there's a million Scream movies.
Also, Sunnyvale
in
had
the
a
same
hellmouth.
place, though.
Yeah.
Sunnyvale had a hellmouth.
A hellmouth, yeah.
So it drew all the nonsense of Buffy's world in.
I already had the shelf trophy, but I listened to My Selma by Willie Mae Brown. And it's her story of growing up in Selma during the civil rights movement. But you also got a sense of the people who live there as well as real life people, and it's autobiographical in a sense. That was really good. And I'm reading, I just started today a book called The Age of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Montell. And it's not fiction, it's nonfiction, but there's different ways. It's from the person who has the podcast, Sounds Like a Cult, where she takes different things and different ways that there's almost like, she even had the cult of overthinking, like people that just, so like I said, I just started it today, and she was talking about her research about how we get into this. I don't even know how to describe it because I'm so at the beginning of it, but the title had me. It just came out like earlier this month or end of last month. So anyway,
nice.
Lots of reading going on.
Well, we'll place a hold on that. That sounds great. I finished The Fall of the House of Usher and all the short stories that are in that book, which were pretty great because there's all this, like, it feels like it's very prescient in pop culture right now, is referencing the House of the Fall of Usher, and I had never actually, read it. So now I can go enjoy those other things. I mean, I already watched the new show by, Mike. Oh, The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, yeah.
So he did an exquisite limited series called The Fall of the House of Usher, and it personifies all of the short stories in that book to the Usher family, and it is so good.
Yeah.
So good. Every detail in his stuff is so good.
Mike Flanagan.
Thank you. Mike Flanagan, rockstar. The Hellfire Club, which was a story about 1950s Washington, and I wasn't sure about it. I started it one night and I was like, this book is boring. It's political intrigue without any intrigue. And then I was gonna return it and I was like, no, I kind of want to know what happens with his wife, and I kind of wondering what's gonna happen with him next, and what about his friend, so I kept going, and by the end it was very good. It's by Jake Tapper, who I think is a CNN correspondent or reporter.
His name sounds familiar.
I heard about it on my favorite travel food show, Somebody Feed Phil.
Oh, I love it.
So he did an episode about Washington, D.C., and he had a meal with two CNN guys, and he was pitching his book. Well, check that out.
Yeah.
So he has 2 more books. So there's 3 books that follow this couple through their 1950s, 1960s life. So that was very good. It took me a minute, though.
Yeah.
Because I had just finished The Dead Take the A Train.
Oh, fun.
Is so good. Karin, I think you would love this book.
Write it down. The title has me.
You might even love this book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a woman who, fights demons, sort of, that come from other dimensions. And it's going to be a series of books. This is just the first in a series. It's by Richard Kadrey and Cassandra Khaw, Khaw. And this girl she runs around New York slaying demons, essentially.
That sounds fun.
Well, there's this corporate demon control.
Got it.
Who is an ex-boyfriend who's using her as a tool, and she's trying to get out of this situation he has trapped her in, and she's falling in love with her childhood best friend, and it's fantastic. I like keep thinking about this book regularly, and it's already been weeks since I finished it. I finished Olive Kittredge, which is a book from the early 2000s. I think it came out in 2008, about a woman in Maine, and it's short. It's a compilation of short stories cobbled together where she is a uniting factor throughout the stories. And I love Olive Kittredge so much. It's like the most real story of people and how just normal people and how they think and all their internal and the things they never ever say to each other.
Interesting.
Like these dynamic inner lives. Like, how are you? And then you get this depth of this person's everything they've thought about this thing since childhood into adulthood. And they're like, fine.
Yeah.
So I think it was just like the most real engaging book I've read in a long time. And then I've got a couple nonfictions. I'm really into this guy. His name is Terrence Real.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my third book about him, and he is a relationship counselor or therapist. And the first book I read of his was published by Goop.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know if I'm going to really read this book. And it was brilliant.
Okay.
And I think I talked about it in the past that like his idea is make more us statements, less you statements, and the whole world would be better. Or
Okay.
I'm sorry, less me, more us.
Okay.
So like if you thought about the world in the bigger, like how are we and us going to do instead of how am I or me doing, everything would be better. So he wrote a book about getting through to men who have been taught not to touch their feelings, which is called How Can I Get Through to You? And it made me really appreciate my husband, who really, I'm sure there's stuff he keeps deeper under the surface, but he's very available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I finished today, Grown Woman Talk by Sharon Malone. She is an OBGYN based in DC. And this book is amazing. And every woman from 15 on probably should be exposed to it.
Mm.
It's like the women's health that you never got.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's amazing.
Good.
Amazing. So I'm getting a hard copy of that book, and I'm probably going to listen to it again. Sort of like, remember the tape in the recorder books, and it little chime when you turn the
page.
So I'm probably going to listen to it with the book, so I can highlight and like tab things that I want to pay attention to and add to my health regimen. And she really talks about advocating for yourself.
That was something I used to appreciate about Kindle when you had the whisper sync. Was you could listen to the audio and read along with the Kindle, and it would turn the page.
Oh, that's lovely.
So you got to interact in your brain. You got with the book in your brain multiple ways.
That is all the things I read.
Nice.
That's all.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
all.
That was good.
If any of them, I think I would recommend The Dead Take the A Train.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
And
sounds...
Olive Kitteridge was really good, but The
That
Dead
sounds
Take
fun.
the A Train was pretty cool.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you have thoughts about any of the books we have talked about, we would love to hear from you. If you have recommendations for other books, we'd also like to hear those too. And our regularly scheduled podcast episode will be out on the first Tuesday of the next month, which will be June. I don't know what day. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.